tunnel was dark, but not completely black. Old emergency lights, long since dead, flickered intermittently, casting a weak, ghostly glow. Every footstep Alexander and Joshua took echoed in the suffocating space, a sound that felt like it was guiding the crow right to them. "Where are we going, Dad?" Joshua asked, his voice trembling with fear. "I don't know, but we're getting away from that bastard," Alexander said, taking a deep breath. The tunnel wasn't straight. It twisted and turned like a vital artery running beneath the town. Faded orange symbols were spray-painted on the walls. "This doesn't look like a sewer," Joshua said. "It looks like an old military base or something." "You're right," Alexander replied, opening the Project Echo folder. His hands were still shaking. In the dim light, he began to flip through the documents. Old maps, bizarre scientific reports, and a few blurry photographs. The file dated back to the late 1950s, a joint research project between the military and a private firm in Riverwood. The project's goal? To study a specific audio frequency, a frequency they believed could manipulate human brain function, even control dreams and memories through sound waves. "Listen to this, Josh," Alexander read under his breath. "Alteration of sleep patterns via low-frequency waves, inducing auditory suggestion in a semi-conscious state." "What the hell is this?" "Sound," Joshua asked. Like the recording of Mom." Alexander stopped dead in his tracks. Caroline's recording, the tremor of fear in her voice, the scream, the final thud. Was it possible that it wasn't just a normal sound? He found a photograph in the file. A picture of a large, old concrete building that looked like a bunker. Underneath, a caption read, "Reflex Laboratory, Bunker 4. "This is the place Laura showed us on the map," Alexander said. "The red on the forest." As they moved forward, the tunnel ended at a large, rusted metal door. An old symbol was etched into it. A circle with 3 wavy lines, like sound waves. "There's no going back," Alexander said, placing his hands on the cold steel. "Wait, look at this," Joshua said, pointing to the side of the door. An old keypad, its numbers faded, was set into the wall. "It needs a code." Alexander looked back at the file. Tucked between the documents, he found an old ID card. It was Caroline's picture, but she looked so much younger. Beneath her photo was a string of numbers, 280,875. "Your mom's birthday," Alexander said. His voice choked. He punched in the numbers, 280,875. After a few seconds of silence, a loud beep echoed through the tunnel. The door groaned open with a screech that reverberated down the corridor. They stepped inside the bunker. Concrete hallways, dangling wires, empty metal crates. The air was noticeably colder in here. "Caroline worked here," Alexander said, unable to believe it. 12 years ago. She was a researcher, not a victim. He kept walking. For 12 years, every report had painted Caroline as a simple housewife who had accidentally fallen from a bridge. But the truth was she was working on a secret military project. So why did she disappear? Why was a secret group with a crow symbol hunting her? And most importantly, what did a recording have to do with this sound project? They reached the main chamber, a large laboratory, its equipment draped in white sheets. In the center of the room was a large chair with electronic cables dangling from it, connected to a device that looked like a massive pair of headphones. This was the reflex room, Alexander read from the file. They tested the sounds on people's brains here. Just then, a scraping sound echoed from the end of the tunnel they'd come from. The crow was coming. They had locked the metal door, but that wasn't going to stop it. Alexander knew their time was up. He moved to a metal table and threw off the sheet covering it. Underneath was an old computer terminal. He placed his hands on the keyboard. Caroline left something here, a message. Joshua suddenly pointed to a corner of the room. "Dad, what's that?" On a small table in the dark corner was a row of black cassette tapes, identical to the one they had found. None of them were labeled, only marked with a serial number. Beside the tapes lay an open notebook. Alexander grabbed it. It was Caroline's handwriting. On the last page, she had written, "Frequency 10.3 Hertz isn't working. It only awakens, and it can mimic a crow. It's playing the sound back." Alexander understood. The crow wasn't just a killer. It was a result of the experiment, something the audio frequency had awakened, something that could mimic sounds. It had heard Caroline's tape, and now it was here for the rest of them. A loud bang hit the metal door. The crow was right outside. Alexander quickly grabbed one of the cassettes and took Joshua's hand. "We have to go, Josh. There's another way." He moved to the corner of the room. Next to the headphone device, there was a small hole in the wall leading to a narrower passage, an escape route. But before they left, Alexander pocketed the tape and glanced back at the room. On the table, he saw a single, small white cassette that stood out from the others. It had no writing on it. He grabbed that one too. They scrambled into the passage, just in time. The metal door burst inward with a deafening crash. The sound of the crow's footsteps, clear as day now, echoed through the laboratory. The passage was narrow and tight, built for one person to squeeze through at a time. Alexander led the way, Joshua right behind him. "Why was Mom working here?" Joshua asked, his voice muffled and anxious in the enclosed space. "To get to the truth, Josh," Alexander said, trying to keep his own breathing steady. She wanted to know what they were really doing with that sound frequency. Alexander clutched the two cassettes, the black one he'd grabbed from the row, and the lone white one from the table. He knew the key to this whole nightmare was on one of these tapes. The passage opened into a junction. 3 different paths lay ahead. On the stone wall next to one of them, a crow symbol had been spray-painted in black. "That bastard's here," Alexander whispered. "It's a marker. It's showing us where it came from." The heavy tread of footsteps echoed from behind them. The crow was entering the passage. "We go the other way," Alexander said, immediately choosing the path opposite the crow symbol. As they ran, Alexander stuffed the Project Echo file into his coat and pulled out the white cassette. He couldn't wait any longer. He had to know what was on it. They found a small chamber. Looked like an old break room. Alexander went straight for a rusted metal table and found an old, dusty cassette player. "Quick, Josh. We listen, then we go." Alexander slid the white tape into the machine. He pressed play. The familiar static hissed, but this time it was quieter, as if this tape was the oldest, or maybe the most important of them all. A man's voice, formal and cold, spoke. "Project Echo Progress Report. Examiner number 4, Mrs. Caroline Matson." It wasn't Caroline's voice. It was an unknown, official-sounding man, giving a report. The man's voice continued. Repetition of the 10.3 Hertz frequency was unsuccessful. The subject did not awaken, but did show extreme cerebral reaction. Instead, the subject began to mimic the sound with which it was awakened. The primary sound was a crow. "Awakened?" Joshua asked in a terrified whisper. Alexander pressed his lips together and motioned for him to be quiet. The man's voice went on. "Subject 0 is physically stable, but psychologically it mimics. We don't know if this behavior is a result of the frequency or something the subject brought with it before the experiment." Then, Caroline's voice came on the tape. Not a scream, but her normal, steady voice. Caroline's voice. "I think you've woken up a phenomenon. This isn't just mimicry. It's a transformation. The subject has listened to my voice, and it can now repeat my exact tone." The man's voice. "Mrs. Matson, you are getting too involved with this subject." Caroline's voice. "I've discovered this project isn't working on a natural creature. This frequency has awakened an ancient power that was buried beneath this town. And what controls it isn't a 10.3 Hz frequency. It's the symbol of the crow." The recording cut off abruptly, as if the tape had been forcibly stopped. A short silence, and then a voice chillingly close filled the small room. The crow's voice. "You shouldn't be listening to this." It didn't come from the recorder. It came from behind them. Alexander and Joshua spun around. The crow stood in the mouth of the passage. Its mask was slick with what had to be Lara's blood, but the most terrifying thing was that it had perfectly mimicked the formal, dry tone of the man from the recording. The crow wasn't a man. It was a weapon, a result of the experiment, a creature that could hear a sound and reproduce it perfectly. Alexander knew running was over. They were trapped in a dead end. He did the only thing he could think of. He ripped out the second, black cassette he had grabbed from the lab. "Listen to this." Alexander yelled, jamming the black tape into the player. He slammed the play button. Static hissed, then a loud, ear-splitting shriek of electronic noise blasted from the speaker. It was a painful, chaotic sound, more like a digital scream than music. The crow stopped instantly. It grabbed its head with both hands. The mask trembled violently, as if the frequency, this agonizing noise, was causing it physical pain. In that moment, Alexander saw it. Lara's .38 revolver, held tight in the crow's hand, but its grip was now shaking from the pain. That's the 10.3 Hz frequency, Alexander realized with dawning horror. He saw his chance. He lunged forward, toward the writhing figure. In one swift, desperate motion, he snatched Lara's .38 from the crow's trembling grip. He pulled back, raising the gun. The crow was still clutching its head, but it was already starting to resist the sound. Alexander knew the effect wouldn't last long. He aimed the revolver at the crow, his own hand shaking. "Josh, get behind me." Alexander pulled the trigger. The gunshot was deafening in the underground maze. The gunshot was so loud in the enclosed space that Alexander's ears rang. The smell of gunpowder was sharp, acrid. Alexander had fired, but not at the crow. He shot the concrete ceiling just above it. A huge chunk of debris broke loose and crashed down. Pinned beneath the rubble, Crow was no longer clutching its head in pain, but it wasn't getting up either. The concrete slabs had it trapped. Alexander knew this had only bought them a few seconds. "Come on, Josh." Alexander gripped the gun tighter. They scrambled past the fallen figure. Its body seemed motionless under the concrete, but Alexander couldn't take the risk. He had to be sure. He turned back. He leveled the gun at the crow. Joshua watched his father with frightened eyes. Alexander felt a flash of internal conflict. This creature was both his wife's killer and the victim of an experiment. Suddenly, the crow's hand moved toward its face. It began to pull at the mask. With a pained grunt, it tore the crow mask away. Underneath, there was no monster, no hardened soldier. It was a middle-aged woman. Her face was a canvas of old scars and ragged burns. Her eyes were weary and empty, like someone who hadn't felt an emotion in a very long time. This woman was a human being who had been turned into a weapon. "Who is that, Dad?" Joshua whispered. The woman's lips parted. Her voice was barely audible, but it was the same formal, cold tone from the cassette tape. "I am Subject Zero of Project Echo." Then, the voice that came from her mouth was different, a voice Alexander knew all too well. It was Caroline's terrified, dying whimper from the first tape. Caroline's voice, coming from the woman. The light's gone. I can't see anything, just a shadow." Alexander understood. The woman could perfectly recreate recorded sounds. She had heard Caroline's final moments, and she was mimicking them. The woman continued, but this time, in what sounded like her own pained voice. "Caroline found me. She said, the frequency. woke me up. It freed me. With her scarred hands, she weakly pointed to a pocket on her dusty uniform. She gave me this. Alexander cautiously stepped forward and pulled out what she was pointing to, a small breast pin shaped like a crow, made of dark silver, the same symbol Lara had shown them at her cabin. The Crow Group, they were looking for me. Caroline wanted to save me. She was going to shut down the frequency. The woman's voice broke with her own pain. The night of the murder, it wasn't my murder. They came. They saw me talking to Caroline. Caroline pushed me. She told me. I recorded everything. Now it all made sense. Caroline hadn't run from a bridge. She had been running from the members of the Crow Group. The cassette they found. It was Caroline's weapon against them. She had recorded the woman's story so that if the tape was ever found, Alexander would know what really happened. With her last bit of strength, the woman looked at Alexander. The group is still here. They want the power of 10.3 hertz for control. Alexander knew they had to go. This woman couldn't do anything more. She was a prisoner of a horrific experiment. Alexander lowered the gun. Come on, Josh. They hurried past the injured woman and into the dark passage ahead. Their new mission, find the Crow Group and destroy this evil power. Just as they rounded the last bend in the passage, a voice came from behind them. Faint pained, the woman's voice. Lara isn't dead. Alexander froze. The woman hadn't moved, but this time, it was Lara's voice she was mimicking, strong and resolute. Even mortally wounded, she had managed to give them one last vital piece of intel. Lara was alive, which meant they still had a chance. The Crow Group hadn't managed to silence her yet. Alexander and Joshua started running again. Now, they had more than just the truth to fight for. They had to save Lara.
It's all about humanity.